Captain Jake Morrison was halfway through his morning coffee when every alarm on the station lit up like Vegas on New Year's Eve. He nearly choked on the hot brew as the sensor panels exploded in color. Something big was happening. Really big. 200 colossal ships had just dropped out of hyperspace right at the edge of the solar system. Each one was bigger than anything Earth had ever put into space. Jake slowly set his coffee down and leaned in, eyes locked on the display. He was aboard Earth Defense Station Liberty, not much more than a floating outpost, honestly, but it was home. For the past 3 years, he'd been stationed here, keeping watch for wayward asteroids and drifting space junk. This was definitely not space junk. "Amy, tell me you're seeing this," Jake called out to his comms officer, Lieutenant Amy Carter. She was frozen in place, mouth hanging open, eyes glued to her monitor. "Sir, I'm reading, 200 contacts. Huge ones. Each ship's about the size of Manhattan." Her voice stayed calm, but Jake could hear the tension tucked just underneath. He pulled up the visual feed and stared at the screen. And then, he laughed. He couldn't help it. The alien ships were monsters, bristling with weapons poking out at every imaginable angle, like some galactic porcupine. They looked like someone took an entire city block, duct-taped cannons all over it, and launched it into space with no real plan. "What's so funny, sir?" Amy asked, spinning around in her chair. Jake pointed at the display. "Look at them. Sure, they're massive, but look how they move. It takes them forever to turn. And those weapons? They're aiming everywhere except forward. It's like someone designed the biggest, most complicated spaceship imaginable, and forgot to ask if it actually works." The alien fleet crept toward Earth like drifting mountains. Massive, slow, struggling to maintain formation as they weaved around Jupiter's moons. One of the largest ships nearly clipped an asteroid because it couldn't pivot fast enough. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," Amy said, hands flying across her panel. "It's coming in on multiple frequencies." Jake nodded. "Let's hear it." The screen flickered, and the face, or something like a face, of an alien filled the display. It looked like a humanoid crystal, refracting light in a dozen colors. No eyes, no mouth, but somehow it managed to look both stern and smug. Its voice echoed like it was coming from inside a deep cave. "Primitive beings of the third planet," it declared. "I am Admiral Zixter Thera of the Galactic Confederation First Contact Fleet. Prepare yourselves for the arrival of your new overlords. We come bearing the might to crush worlds and the wisdom of 1,000 civilizations. Kneel before the Confederation, and perhaps you will be allowed to serve." Jake glanced at Amy. She had one hand over her mouth, trying not to laugh. He clicked open the mic to respond. "Well, good morning, Admiral," Jake said, leaning back in his chair. "Captain Jake Morrison here, Earth Defense Station Liberty. Welcome to our neighborhood. I gotta say, those are some seriously impressive ships you've got there. Real pointy. Quick question, though, do they actually steer, or do you just kind of aim in a direction and hope for the best?" Silence. Long, awkward silence. Jake could almost picture the crystalline admiral blinking. If it had eyelids, and trying to figure out what just happened. This probably wasn't how first contact usually went. Amy was barely holding it together now, hands shaking as she typed something into her console. Jake grinned and leaned into the mic again. "No disrespect, Admiral. But I've been watching your fleet try to thread the needle around Jupiter's moons for the last hour, and it's been entertaining. That big, shiny one, looks like the flagship. Almost pancaked into a moon. Might want to work on that turning radius." The alien admiral reappeared, this time with a visible flicker of emotion. Somehow, even as a living crystal, it managed to look both confused and insulted. "You dare mock the eternal dominion," the admiral snapped. "That vessel possesses the combined firepower of 100 lesser fleets. It could reduce your planet to dust. Jake nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, I don't doubt it. Thing looks like it could level a continent. If you can actually point it at the target. But tell me something, how long does it take that thing to pull a U-turn? I'm guessing, 3 hours? The alien admiral emitted a sound like glass shattering. You cannot comprehend the sophistication of Confederation engineering. Our ships are marvels, refined over millennia. Oh, I'm sure they are, Jake replied with a grin. Looks very sophisticated. Probably took a whole civilization to build those. But here's what I'm wondering. Did anyone stop to ask whether making them that big was actually a good idea? Jake stood and walked up to the screen, folding his arms. See, us humans, we've got a saying, keep it simple, stupid. The best solutions? They're the ones that work. Not necessarily the ones that look the flashiest. Amy suddenly sat upright, eyes locked on her screen. Sir, we're detecting power buildup. They're charging something, big. Looks like a massive energy cannon. Jake turned to the tactical display. Sure enough, the flagship, the one called Eternal Dominion, was lighting up like a Christmas tree. Readings were spiking. It looked like it'd take a few minutes to charge, but it was definitely something serious. They're targeting the asteroid belt, Amy said. Probably trying to show off. Jake took a long sip of coffee. Well, let's see what all that sophisticated engineering can actually do. The alien admiral's face returned to the screen. Behold the power of the Confederation. Observe as we demonstrate why resistance is futile. Jake watched the energy levels climb steadily. The weapon was massive, no doubt about it, but it also looked like it was taking forever to spool up. And the whole ship had stopped moving completely to aim. Jake raised an eyebrow. You know what, Admiral, he said, his voice casual, almost amused. I think this is gonna be the start of a very interesting conversation. Colonel Sam Rodriguez was halfway through a roast beef sandwich when his tactical officer came charging into the mess hall like his pants were on fire. Sir. You've gotta see this, now. Lieutenant Chris Baker looked both thrilled and terrified, which was rarely a good sign. Sam wiped his hands, stood up, and followed the younger officer out of the dining area and down the corridor to the command deck. Earth Defense Platform Washington had only been online for 6 months, parked between Mars and Jupiter like a watchful guard dog. It wasn't as big as the alien ships, not even close, but it was fast, modern, and packed with Earth's latest weapons tech. Show me what we've got, Sam said, sliding into his command chair. Chris tapped the console, and the tactical display lit up. Dead center was the Eternal Dominion, the biggest of the alien vessels, glowing like a volcano about to blow. They've been charging this thing for 8 minutes now, Chris said. Whatever it is, it's big. Sam raised an eyebrow. And they're just, sitting there. Chris nodded. Totally stationary. They're rotating, trying to line up the shot. Sam opened a comm channel to the Liberty station. Captain Jake Morrison's face popped up on screen, still sipping his coffee and wearing a grin like this was all just a backyard fireworks show. Sam. You watching this light show? Hard to miss, Sam said. You think they're trying to scare us? Jake shrugged. Feels like it. First they talk big, now they want to follow it up with a boom. Classic intimidation play. Sam nodded slowly. Made sense. The aliens had flexed with their entrance, talked tough, and now they were trying to show off. Predictable. Then, like a Galactic stage director yelling, "Action," the alien admiral's voice came over every channel at once. Primitive humans, the voice boomed, witness the unmatched power of the Galactic Confederation. We shall destroy the asteroid designated as Target 77 Alpha. Watch, and despair. Chris leaned over the display. Target 77 Alpha, okay, big rock, 2 miles wide. Standard asteroid belt debris. Looks like they picked a fat one for dramatic effect. Countdown? Sam asked. 10 minutes and counting. Weapon still charging. Sam watched the screen. The Eternal Dominion was glowing brighter, energy reading spiking with each passing second. The whole ship had stopped mid-space, holding position, slowly turning like a cruise ship lining up a fireworks display. 15 minutes in, Chris said. Almost ready. Then, finally, it happened. The alien weapon fired. A blinding lance of energy shot from the ship's main cannon, so bright it triggered automatic screen filters. It cut through space like a superheated blade, roaring toward the asteroid. It took 30 seconds to reach its target, and when it hit, it hit. The rock exploded in a massive plume of debris, vapor, and scattered fragments. The alien admiral's voice returned, triumphant. Behold! The fate of all who oppose us. Surrender, or be next. Sam glanced around the bridge. His crew were doing their best to keep a straight face, but a few were clearly struggling. Chris raised a hand like a kid in class. Permission to speak freely, sir. Go ahead. That was super dramatic and all, but 15 minutes to charge and 30 seconds to hit a rock. I mean, our railguns could have done that in 2 seconds. Sam chuckled. Chris wasn't wrong. Let's give them a little taste of how we handle things, Sam said. Light it up. Chris's face lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. Really? Can we use the new kinetic system? Do it. Chris spun in his chair and got to work. The Washington's newest toy was the kinetic rail system, a ridiculously simple, ridiculously effective weapon. No energy beams, no fancy tech, just solid metal rods hurled at insane speeds. Targets acquired, Chris said. 3 asteroids, same size, 4,000 kilometers out. Fire when ready. The first shot was almost anticlimactic. No flash, no glow, just a quiet hum. A tungsten slug, about the size of a baseball, launched from the railgun at nearly a fraction of light speed. It crossed the distance in 1.2 seconds and hit the asteroid dead center. The rock vanished in a bloom of dust and debris. Direct hit, Chris said. Target 1 neutralized. The second and third followed just as fast. 3 rocks. 3 shots. 6 seconds. Sam opened a channel to the alien fleet. This is Colonel Rodriguez of Earth Defense Platform Washington. Thanks for the demonstration, very pretty lights. Here's how we handle asteroids. Silence. Total silence. Then, Jake's voice crackled through the comms, full of laughter. Nice shooting, Sam. Very economical. Thanks, Jake. We aim to please. The alien admiral's image returned to the screen. Zixter Thera looked visibly rattled, well, as much as a glowing crystal being could. How did you achieve such rapid destruction with primitive weapons? We detected no energy buildup, no charging sequence. Sam leaned back in his chair. It's simple, Admiral. We just throw things really, really hard, and really, really fast. Turns out if you shoot something fast enough, you don't need lasers. But the power requirements must be enormous. How do you generate that much force without dedicated charging systems? Sam glanced at Chris, who shrugged. Capacitors. Magnetic acceleration. Basic physics, really. We store the energy ahead of time, then dump it all at once. No need to wait around. The alien admiral was quiet. Processing. Recalculating. Your weapons technology is unexpectedly efficient. Sam smiled politely. We try to keep things simple. On the tactical display, the alien ship started to move again, slowly repositioning, trying to shift formation. Sam squinted at the screen. One ship nearly collided with another while turning. He keyed the mic again. "No offense, Admiral, but, do you folks ever practice fleet maneuvers?" That looked rough. Another long pause. Finally, Zixter's voice returned, far less booming than before. "The Confederation fleet operates according to protocols developed over millennia." "I'm sure it does," Sam said, smiling. "But maybe it's time for a bit of an update." Jake's laughter came back through the comms. "Sam," he said, still chuckling, "I think we've got their attention." Sam leaned forward, watching the alien ships awkwardly reposition themselves. "Yeah," he said. "I think you're right." Admiral Zixter Thera was having a very bad week. First, his fleet's grand entrance had been met with mockery. Then, their planet-busting weapon got upstaged by a glorified metal slingshot. And now, the Confederation Council was breathing down his crystalline neck, demanding to know how a supposedly primitive species had publicly embarrassed the galaxy's most powerful civilization, twice. Something had to be done. That's when he got the idea, a cultural exchange. If raw firepower and ancient tradition couldn't impress these humans, then surely the collective wisdom of the galaxy's finest minds would put them in their place. 3 days later, the most elite delegation in galactic history assembled aboard the Eternal Dominion. There was High Philosopher Venteras, floating in his meditation sphere, radiating enlightenment and the wisdom of 10,000 years. Master Engineer Clank 7 of the Construct race arrived next, his heavy metal form rolling on 12 treads, housing centuries worth of technological knowledge from a million worlds. And finally, General Thmor of the Gorthani Empire stood tall in ceremonial battle armor, arms crossed, bearing the 17 sacred scrolls of galactic warfare like holy relics. They were the best. The brightest. The culmination of millennia of civilization. Humanity wouldn't stand a chance. Back on Earth, Dar. Ben Murphy was late. His pickup truck broke down 10 miles from the spaceport, and now he was jogging toward the shuttle, his bag bouncing against his hip. Ben was a veterinarian from Montana. He'd volunteered for the cultural exchange mostly out of curiosity, and because nobody else in his town had signed up. Maria Gonzalez, a middle school science teacher from New Mexico, was already seated inside the shuttle reviewing her notes. She'd been chosen because she was excellent at explaining complicated stuff to 12-year-olds. She figured aliens couldn't be that different. And then there was Pete Johnson, retired auto mechanic, 73 years old, chewing on a toothpick while fiddling with a busted radio. He had spent 5 decades fixing engines and had insisted on going. "Somebody's gotta look at their power systems," Pete had said. "Bet they're overcomplicated." The human delegation arrived aboard the alien flagship and were ushered into a towering conference room. The ceiling stretched into darkness, and glowing alien symbols danced across the walls like ancient hieroglyphs. High Philosopher Venteras descended from his sphere to begin the exchange. "Welcome, primitive beings," he said in a voice that echoed like singing wind chimes. "The ethereal collective has contemplated the mysteries of existence for 10,000 years. We have discovered the 17 laws that govern all life." He began to recite them. The first law, the proper hierarchy of intelligent species. The second, the correct posture when addressing a superior being. The third, the sanctity of ancient protocols. Ben Murphy politely listened for about 20 minutes before raising his hand like he was in a high school classroom. Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but, what if we just don't follow them?" Venteras stopped mid-chant. His glow dimmed slightly. "I beg your pardon." "The laws," Ben repeated. "What if a species just decides not to follow them? Who's gonna enforce it?" The room fell silent. In 10,000 years, no one had ever asked that question. "But, they are the laws," Venteras finally replied. "All civilized species must follow them." "Says who?" Ben asked. "I mean, we've got laws on Earth, too. Some make sense, like don't steal cows. But others? Like you can't fish on Sundays in certain counties? Kinda silly. People ignore those all the time. Venteras made a sound like a xylophone falling down a staircase and floated back up into his sphere to rethink some things. Next up was Master Engineer Clank 7. Perhaps you will appreciate the achievements of the Construct Collective, he said, his voice a chorus of clicking gears. Observe our fusion reactor. The humans were led into the ship's engine room. A maze of glowing pipes, spinning turbines, and humming containment fields. The reactor was the size of a football stadium. This reactor powers our entire fleet, Clank 7 declared. It is the pinnacle of engineering refinement. Pete Johnson wandered around, tapping on pipes, listening, occasionally sniffing the air like he was in his garage. After 10 minutes, he burst out laughing. "Y'all are doing this the hard way," he said, pulling a stained notebook from his pocket. "I've been tinkering with fusion in my shed. Blew up a couple things, but I figured some stuff out." Pete flipped to a page full of hand-drawn diagrams and pencil notes. "See, the problem's your containment field. Too round. If you angle it like this," he pointed to a rough triangle, "and feed fuel from 3 points instead of 1, you get triple the output with half the size." Clank 7 ran the math through his internal processors at light speed. The human's design was crude, but solid. Better than their own. "How did you discover this?" he asked. "Trial and error," Pete said, grinning. "Mostly error." Then came General Thmore. "The humans will understand the art of war," he boomed, unfurling a scroll the size of a carpet. "For 5,000 years, the Gorthani Empire has refined the tactics of conquest." He spread out complex battle diagrams showing massive fleets in tight formations. "This is the Crimson Dawn maneuver," he explained. "Unbreakable by any known force." Maria Gonzalez squinted at the scrolls. "Why don't you just go around them?" she asked. Thmore blinked. "Go around?" "Yeah, like flanking," Maria said. "My 8th graders figured that out during Capture the Flag week." The Gorthani general stared at her, stunned. Flanking had never occurred to him. It wasn't in the sacred scrolls. "Sometimes," Maria said gently, "the best strategy is the one nobody bothers to write down." From his command center, Admiral Zixter watched everything unfold. His philosophers, engineers, and generals, outmaneuvered by a vet, a mechanic, and a schoolteacher. This was not going to plan. Desperate to save face, Zixter turned to one last option, a formal challenge. 3 contests. The aliens would set the rules, use their best equipment, and prove once and for all that the Confederation was superior. At least, that was the idea.